Are you wanting to create a highly prosperous photography business doing what you love? Or maybe you have a great business already and want to up your game? Then you're in the right place. Master craftsman photographer Luci Dumas and her guests are here to support you on your journey. Now here's your hostess and tour guide, Luci.
Photography takes an instant out of time, altering life by holding it still. And that's a quote by the incredible photographer Dorothea Lange. So I want to welcome you again to the Profitable Photographer. It's been a long couple of weeks since I've recorded, so if I seem a little rusty or flaky, just enjoy that or don't. And I'm so excited to talk to our guest today, Michael Davis, because we're going to be talking about wedding albums, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart. In fact, albums in general are something that I'm particularly fond of. And as I was sitting down here, I realized if you're watching this, I've been going through albums of family things, and these are like 70 years old. So I grew up with albums in my life, and I know Michael is just as passionate about creating them for our clients as I am. Let's see. So remember that this is also going to be on YouTube, or if you're watching on YouTube, remember that this is also on my podcast platform. And let's just get started. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. What a great smile. I hope you go to YouTube, everybody, so you can see that great smile. So first off, I would like to know just a wee bit. Oh, wait, I didn't read your bio. Okay.
Oh, no, you're good.
I'm going to do that, though. Michael is a wedding photographer and a storyteller who focuses on preserving his clients' love stories through albums and prints. Yay. Michael has been a professional wedding photographer since 2011, and he continues to work with clients, but he also coaches photographers on how to build albums that sell. And I invited him to be on the show because this is a topic we really haven't dove into about how you create the albums. I'm always preaching, make albums, make wall portraits, but thank you for helping us figure out how the heck you do it. So
yes, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
So a little brief background, if you would, kind sir.
Of course. So thank you again for having me. I greatly appreciate it. And I love talking about stories, right? Because that's what we're talking about, right? And my love of storytelling started probably in the early 2000s. I used to do digital stories with middle school kids. And what I realized is that people they want to be seen and they want to be heard. You know, and the beauty with photography is that we have a chance to do that. Like we have a chance to listen to our couples and listen to our families, and give them the vision that they want, and then show them what that looks like in a book. Show them what that looks like in the album. Show that what it looks like on their walls. And I'm glad that I can do that as a profession. So,
how did you Did you grow up with a camera in your hand? Were those video stories?
Yeah. So I actually I went to art school. I have a degree in digital art, multimedia design, and I graduated doing video production. And this was in 2007. And then I started doing digital storytelling with middle school kids. And I transitioned in photography in the early 2000s, really because the return on investment was easier than video. And my wife said, this hobby needs to stop coming out of your full-time job salary account. So I had to figure out like how to pay for itself. And I went the photo route, and never put the camera back down. And I absolutely love it. And the storytelling's the same because I have an art background and a video background. Transition to photography was very, very seamless.
That makes total sense. And yes, the hours that people put, especially pre-digital, the hours that videographers would have to put in to create a nice video that I think gets watched a few times when it's new, and then on anniversaries, and then now in my background they're all VCR, so I'd have to pull out my VCR, where I put that, and I still value it because even though I'm no longer married, there's family members. There's me looking much thinner and younger, and you know, my dad and mom are no longer with me. So, yeah, but the albums, we can sit down and look at them all the time so simply, as long as we got eyeballs, right?
Yes, yes. And even if we just listen, and I think that's the beauty of creating albums and sharing stories, is that, just sharing like, oh, this is what's happening on this page. Like, they're conversation starters. Every page turner is a conversation starter that invites people to share in that moment, in that story, and what's happening and who's there and all the excitement. And that's the beauty of just turning page by page by page. In a wedding album, whether it's a wedding album or a family portrait album or your family albums that you just showed. That's where the stories is. And that's why I always introduce myself as a storyteller and wedding photographer. I'm a storyteller first, because I focus on what is it that my clients are trying to share with me? What is it that they want to showcase to the world? What is it that they want their loved ones to experience? Because their wedding day, while it might be one day, it's still their love story that literally lasts till the end of time. And putting that in a physical product, that's what preserves it. And that's the work that I do for my clients. And that is the philosophy that I try to teach to other students, that I coach, is saying like, hey, like, we're not just giving physical products, like we're giving legacy. And I know that's a buzzword, right? Legacy.
It's buzzword because it's a good one. It's apropos.
And that's what it is. Like we are preserving our clients' legacy and their stories, to outlive them. And that's amazing. And this might be a little vain of me, but I love being a part of that process. Like, it just gives me joy.
I'm with you. And I don't think it's vain. I think it shows a heart for service to want to produce that. What I loved, first of all, a couple things that I had never thought about it quite the way you just did, that an album is a story when we put it together in that way, but there's stories within the stories. So like in that little book that I just held up, I'd been looking for years for this picture of me sitting among flowers. And I don't know why this album got buried, and then it showed up recently, and there was that picture. And I remember my parents telling me the story of that photograph. So yeah, it's holds these little treasures that are, it gets deeper and deeper. And the other thing I'm realizing, if people listened to my show last week, my mom passed away just a few days ago, and the photographs are taking on different meanings now that she's gone, in the documenting of the different eras of her life. And there's just something that what I heard you say is like, there's more than like, oh, here's a memory that's on the surface. That there's a much deeper value in those legacies. So I love that.
Yes, it definitely keeps them alive in us, right? And one of the biggest challenges that I see other photographers battle with is, well, I don't want to be a salesperson. Like, I don't want to give them something that they don't want. but everybody wants to cherish their loved ones.
Mm.
You know, like everybody wants to keep those stories alive. Everybody wants to see a representation of what that person looks like and what they used to wear and what they did and them smiling or dancing on the dance floor. Like everybody wants those moments. So it's a injustice to us if we're not doing that for them.
Yep. I'm I'm on the same page. I always feel like I did not do my job if I don't create things that are finished as opposed to handing off digital files.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think having the files is not complete? What's the
Well,
issue for
yeah.
that?
So, you know, as I was thinking about this, I just finished a wedding expo in Austin, Texas. And when I will put the albums inside of the potential client's hands, they were just like, wow, this is not even my wedding, and I'm getting so emotional
Mm.
about it. They're like,
Yes.
I don't even know these people, and like I want to cry right now because this is so
Mm.
beautiful.
Mm.
And so it's those moments that I realized that a snapshot is not enough.
Mm.
Like a sole picture on your computer or on your phone, it only tells a piece. It's a piece of the puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we're missing everything else if they don't have that book.
Right. So why don't they just make it themselves? What's wrong with, well, it's not wrong, not making people wrong that don't do albums, but um, why do you feel it's a disservice to let them put their own albums together?
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think that the first thing is there's a large group of photographers who just don't know how. Like they don't know how to do it. What are
Mm-hmm.
the tools? How much do they cost? How do I do this? What software do I need? What album companies do I choose? There's just so much information. There's so much at their fingertips that it's like information overload.
Right.
Where do I start?
Right.
And then the second piece is changing that mentality, that mindset from delivering just digital galleries to really culling that story into pages.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can shoot a wedding and we can deliver 1,000 images, but we're not putting 1,000 images inside of an album.
Right.
You know, we're putting maybe 100 to 150, maybe a 100-page album or different volumes
Mm-hmm.
that we're creating, and each image is intentional.
Right.
And I think it's that intentionality, like as we continue along this digital age, like with mirrorless cameras, just shooting, the more and more people shoot, the less, in my opinion, people are being intentional about, like, I want to capture this because this moment matters, and this is going to be beautiful on this page and this album with these people, and they're going to appreciate this for the rest of their lives.
When you were starting what you just said, I had this picture of movie makers, filmmakers saying, yes, like Steven Spielberg saying he made a movie called E.T. And you get in the mail, you get 15 CDs with all of the takes, all of the things, and within there is the movie. Maybe he even includes some soundtracks and says, okay, here's that movie. Is that that's not a movie. That's the raw materials. And wait, did Spielberg do E.T.? If anybody, anyway.
Yeah, I believe Spielberg did E.T.
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is that you are the filmmaker, you're the storyteller, like any great director. It would be the director that figures out the final cuts and the music and when you stop and when you start and where that scene goes. When I do wedding albums, I'm always like, how do I open this up? Do I want it with just the bride and progress, or do I want to start with a magnificent one and then work backwards. Or it also helps when there's a page and the groom's family is all on that page. So you get the little story of, this is the groom's family. So am I on the
Yeah, no,
right track?
of course, of course. And you know what? And I want to introduce another maybe contentious topic, is that the barrier to our industry is very low right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anybody can essentially pick up a camera and say that, you know, these are my prices. And if couples say, oh, this fits with my budget, I like their photos, they'll hire them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's been happening for probably the last decade in the rise of digital cameras, if not more.
Right.
And so what I'm seeing more often than not is just that, you know, I have a camera, I take some nice photos, so you should trust me. And what I tell myself and what I tell my students is that it's so much more, because they're not trusting you to take pictures.
Right.
They're trusting you to document what they don't even see. They're trusting you to take their entire day and show them, these are the people, these are the moments, these are the emotions. And back to our intention, that takes intention from the artist.
Right.
And part of what I do is that I try to be very intentional, even from the beginning. When I talk to my clients during a consultation, I'm learning about them. I want to know who they are. I want to know the love story. I want to know how they met. I want to know their vision for the wedding, because all of that is important. You know, the music that they choose, why they chose the first dance, every piece of that is important, because they're being intentional about how they plan their wedding, about who they invite to their wedding. So I need to be intentional about receiving that information, because when I build their album, I'm putting in those pieces that I've learned from them. That's part of them, and that's part of their story. I'm putting in those people. You know, if I know like Great Aunt Sue came from Australia and they haven't seen them in 15 years, of course I'm going to pay attention to Great Aunt Sue, you know, who's going to be in the album, you know, versus, you know, someone who's maybe always on the dance floor, but they're a guest, you know.
And they're fun to photograph.
Yes.
But they're not that important. Maybe one of those just to show the fun,
Correct.
but not endlessly.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm thinking about when I was married the first time, a friend photographed. It was a good photographer. He did a great job. And then he gave me the negatives. And then, as someone, I'd only been in the business 2 years, maybe. And then I had to figure out how to make a wedding album. And it took me an entire year, and I was a photographer. So do you agree that, or I think what I was hearing with the overwhelm, or the next thing I would include is, so if it's overwhelming for us, imagine a client with 1,000 images or more trying to figure out how to make an album. So maybe they do a quick shutterfly and a few 8x10s, but 100 years later, at their memorial, or wait, okay, well, let's say 80 years later, that there's not going to be an album of that person's wedding day in, you know, in the reception. So
and you're right. Like we get overwhelmed all the time. I've heard from a lot of photographers that they're still working on their family album, or they're still working on their wedding album, and they got married like years ago. And part about being intentional is that, like, I print out my family portraits. So when we take family pictures, whether we hire a professional or whether I do it on my camera or vacation, we have a wall of pictures. And I have 3 kids, and my kids love to look at that stuff. They love to look at their pictures. They love to look through the photo books. And I think that because I see the joy in my own children and my own family and watching them grow up, I'm saying, hey, let me do this for you because I know how taxing it is. I know how much time it takes to carve out and sit down and say, okay, I have all these images. Now what do I do? Do I just
Right.
throw them all in online? You
Mm-hmm.
know, how do I pick the best ones? And if I'm being honest, my clients hire me because they trust me,
Yes.
not just to photograph their wedding, but they trust me to be present enough to understand what is important to them.
Right.
And when we're talking about finishing that story, it doesn't end until they have the album in their hands and they trust me to put those pictures in that make the most sense, so that when I show them the draft of the album, they're like, oh my God, this was amazing. Like, I didn't even know some of this stuff happened.
Right.
And it's a completely different response to when they get their online gallery. They get their online gallery and they're just like, oh, these are pretty pictures. But when they get their album, they're just like, oh, and look at grandma on the dance floor and this, and oh, I didn't even know this moment. Like, it's worlds apart from each other, from
Yes.
looking at it digitally than actually holding it. And
Mm-hmm.
so during my consultations, one of the reasons why I tell my couples my albums are included in the packages is because I know life happens
Mm-hmm.
after your wedding day. Whether you decide to start a family, whether you already have a family, whether you're going on your honeymoon, whether you're not going on your honeymoon right away, like, life continues to happen. And building that album and getting those prints just gets pushed and pushed and pushed until you look up and you're celebrating your 20-year anniversary and you're like, we never built this.
Yeah.
We never
Yeah.
built
And
this at
now all of that enjoyment for those 20 years, the kids, like I have, my parents hired a beginning photographer for their wedding and nothing turned out.
Oh no.
But there was someone who had just purchased a camera and slide film, which who knew 1944, 43, 44, they had just invented slide film. And so a friend of theirs stood next to the photographer and took 6 pictures. And so those 6 turned out well, but they're not looking at the camera. They're looking just off to the photographer.
Mm-hmm.
But still, the amount of times my siblings and I and my parents and nieces and nephews have looked at and treasured the picture of them at the cake and, of course, at the altar and a couple of other key moments was precious. And just can imagine if that photographer's film had come out, what would have happened. Now, people might wonder, how did that work? And back in the 40s, they had flash, a kind of flash. You took art classes, maybe the history of photography, but there was a big flash that the duration of the light was longer than our strobes. So when the one photographer clicked, then the other one knew to click and was able to get images. So yeah, it's important. I love everything you're saying. And
thank you.
and people are either, if they're on this, team wedding album, are like, yeah, preach, or they're like, maybe I need to think about that. But what I'm wanting to have you share next, because we've covered the why, is first of all, how do you shoot for the story? And then I want to talk about some of the practicalities of creating a wedding album.
Of course. So throughout this entire conversation, I'm still going to reiterate intention, right? And I think before you even pick your camera up, you have to be intentional about knowing what the story is, knowing what it is that you're actually photographing and who it is that you're actually photographing, and swallowing your ego and saying, this is not about me as an artist. This is about the people in front of me, the people who trusted me to photograph one of the most vulnerable and intimate moments in their lives. And so during my consultation, I go in with that intention to understand it and unpack what's important to them, what their lives
Okay.
look like, how they met,
Mm,
and all those things,
sure.
because that helps feed the wedding day. It helps me understand what to look for, the relationship with their parents, the meaningfulness about who's invited and who's important, to make sure that I'm paying attention and capturing those special moments and not just waiting for stuff to happen.
Okay.
Because if I know that they have a special relationship or they haven't seen somebody important for a long time, when they enter that room, I already know magic is going to happen,
Mm,
and being
mhm.
prepared for that. And that begins during the consultation.
Right.
That doesn't begin when I show up at the wedding
Got it. Now, do you have a
glitch?
Ooh.
Try again in a few seconds.
My
day.
television just talked to me. All right. I don't even know if it's Siri or who it is. Um, do you have a checklist? When I do weddings, I have some things that I think are foundational. And so I have a checklist and my assistant helps me. Do you use a checklist, and is it different for every client?
I have an internal checklist, and then I have a like a important people list,
Okay.
right? So that I know the important people that they want to capture and they want to focus on. And the reason why I actually don't have like the checklist that you see on Wedding Wire, and I used to have brides send me a checklist to say, make sure you get this and this and this and this
Yeah.
and this, or send me like 3 pages of Pinterest ideas
Yeah.
and things of that sort. And the reason why I don't do that is because I find that, if I am focusing on my physical checklist or something that they gave me, I'm not being present in the moment. I'm like, okay, did I get this? Did I get this? Did I get that? Instead of watching things unfold and being
Mhm.
present. And I think shooting through those moments, in my opinion, is more important than any checklist that anybody can give me. Because
Okay.
yes, while you want a picture of your jewelry and your dress and those things of that sort, if I spend too much time on that, I'm missing the camaraderie in the
Mhm.
room.
Yeah.
I'm missing the jokes and the cheers and the laughter. I'm missing the tears,
Mm.
between siblings. And while mainstream media has trained us and trained couples to say, like, these are the pictures that you need, right?
Mhm.
Like, these are the poses that you need. You need to look like this. You need to wear this. I combat that and say, in 5 years, in 10 years, it's not going to matter
Mm.
at all.
Right.
It's going to be those moments with those people.
Right.
And so that's what I focus on more often than not. So in my internal checklist, along with the story, I do take notes, during my consultations. I take notes about things that they're telling me about, and I refresh myself, before the wedding day, family dynamics, all those things, so that I'm prepared and I know what I'm walking into. And then, I allow myself to be present
Got it.
and shoot through the moments, and capture the things that people don't see.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do get the stuff that they want, of course, they want things that are on Instagram worthy. So, I'll get, a picture or two of those. But every time, it never fails that the pictures that I take and the moments that I capture, they feel so much more connected to
Mm.
than the picture that they wanted that they saw on Pinterest.
Right. Because it's real. It's not a scripted
Yeah.
event. Now, my checklist, and this was in the days of film, mostly was there so I could sleep at night
I understand.
because I couldn't remember if I got the bride with her mom and dad alone, if I got, just those, the ones that sell consistently and to
Mm-hmm.
me are part
Mm-hmm.
of everyone's story in an album, which is to kind of have the cast featured.
Yes. Yes.
And it was always the ones that when I sat down and helped them design albums, the ones they purchased and the ones they included. Luckily, candids and real moments are much more popular than when I was doing weddings. I was great at candids, and very few of them would end up as featured images in the book because it just wasn't popular. I mean, when I started, one of the go-tos was the bride and groom double exposure looking down on the ceremony.
Yeah, gotcha.
Which one day, because I did that and it was so hard to do, and I didn't like it, but I thought you had to do it. And one day I realized, no, I don't have to do this. I love taking the bride and groom outside and doing romantics, and I was like, as God is my witness, I'll never do a double exposure again. So, you know, I love how you bring your own heart and your own vision fully.
And you said something very, very important about trends, right? Trends sell online, right? They don't sell when we're like right in front of the person and they're looking at their photos.
Interesting. Tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah. So when you were talking about like the double exposure, I remember maybe 5 or 10 years ago, dinosaurs chasing couples down the road. And then now, you know, there's like viral TikToks and people want to do this and people want to do that, or, you know, and all of it is trendy. All of it is fun. They're really cool images. But when we talk about what are clients most willing to spend their money on, and I find it tends to be the people that they love.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they want to pay to remember the people that they love, not what they saw on Pinterest.
Right.
Not what they saw on Instagram. And that's what I mean by that. And I see a lot of photographers, you know, they're shooting, they're capturing the trends, they're trying to capture everything. They're shooting all this stuff, and they're not being intentional about being present in the moment and watching things unfold and listening to reactions and responding to people's body language. Because that is so much more important than, okay, did I get this most recent trend that, you know, they saw on Pinterest,
right?
You know,
right.
Or that they saw on Instagram, or that they saw another photographer took. You know, did I take that picture? You know, because sometimes, more often than not, those pictures don't make the albums.
Right. And if we don't sit down with our clients and help them select what they love, we would never know that. So that to me is one of the strong reasons, besides everything else that you're talking about, is that our work becomes A, better, and B, more targeted to what they love. So
you
I think
are so right.
I think that we're on the same page with that. Now, do you think that clients really care about someone's editing style? And is someone looking for dark and moody or light and airy? I have an opinion on that, but I want to ask yours first.
Yes. I think clients care today, but they don't care tomorrow.
Ooh,
yeah.
That's good.
I think that, you know, in the same, you know, breath we're talking about trends, people want to stay relevant, and in this age of going viral and being relevant and trying to have the latest thing or stay with the latest trends or be hip like the rest of their friends or get published in a magazine, what they're missing is that in a year from now, in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, in 25 years from now, none of that's going to matter.
Right.
It's going to shift. The trends are going to shift. What you did on your wedding day is no longer going to be relevant. And your child is going to say, well, Mom, you know, that was an old thing and we don't do that anymore. You know, none of that is going to be relevant. And the only thing that's going to stand the test of the time is being able to see the people, being able to live in the moments.
Right.
And for that reason, I tell people that my style is, you know, classic meets modern and creative. And I actually had a client, a potential client at the wedding expo come up to me and say, "Hey, do you do, editorial?" And I was like, we could do polls and set things up. She was like, "Oh no, movement and blurriness and this, that." And I was like, no. I was like, I don't do that. And if that's something that you want, then I would, reach out to a photographer who does that. Because
Mhm.
my goal, as you see and hear, is for you to relive these moments and these people
Right.
and not focus on, oh, did I get that shot that I saw in Vanity Fair?
Right. Right. I used to always, when someone would bring me a picture from a magazine, this is pre-computer, and I'd say, like a bride, an incredible scene, or bride and groom, and I say, they had a team of 20 people and they spent a day to get this one perfect image. So I cannot promise that. So having our clients' expectations of us and saying yes to what we're comfortable with is what I am hearing from you, that you know who you are, what you do, is important.
Yeah.
And if someone wants a photographer that does the whole thing like it's a fashion spread, then there are people that do a beautiful job with that. And
Yep.
that's just not your style or my style. So yeah, I was thinking about at a certain point in my career, hand colored black and whites, where you did spot color on a real black and white photograph with the Marshall oils, was a trend. And then it was a trend for a while with digital wedding photographs. And then it became like, if you want that, I'd rather burn my camera than do spot. And what I'm hearing from you is what's really important is not the spot color. It's who was in the photograph. What does that mean? The fact that there's little hand colored hat and flowers and cheeks or not is unimportant over time. And in
Yes.
fact, I think sometimes trends can make something look so dated
Of
that
course.
it's harder to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, my theory is people want to look good and they want to look like they're having a good time and they just want it pretty. So if it's dark and moody, but you can still see the people, or if it's light and airy, or me, I tend to go a little saturated. That's cool. If someone doesn't like that, I'll do other editing styles because my intention is good photography. How it's edited is a secondary issue.
I agree.
Partly because I don't want it to look old fashioned in 5 years.
Correct.
And yeah, anyway.
And I tell my clients that, the only indication of your wedding date that I want people to see is your wedding dress. That's the only indication. Everything else, I want you to feel like this could have happened yesterday.
Yeah.
I want you to look like yourself. I want you to look like you're having fun. All the music, all the love, all the tears. Like it just happened yesterday. Because when you open those books up, I want you to feel like those people are right next to you.
Right. You don't want to be like, oh,
yeah,
look at that. So like some of the cakes that had fountains and little lights and things, like everything has trends. And it's actually fun to have some of that captured. But what I'm hearing you say is you don't want that to be what's most noticeable.
And that should be the selling point.
Right.
And I think that when we're talking about, why photographers maybe struggle with making or selling albums is because their selling point is they're not starting off with the right selling point. If you're selling the trend, if you're selling the editing style, then you're not focused on the person. You're focused on you and what you can do, and not necessarily what is it that this client is actually coming to you for.
Right.
What's important to them? What is it that they want? Who is important to them? Why are the people there? Why are the songs there? Why are the colors there? How meaningful they are? And so I try to focus on that. And when I talk to people about building albums, or when I'm building albums myself, you know, they need to make sense. The pages need to make sense. The pictures need to make sense with each other.
Right.
And if they don't, then people are going to see like something's off, right? It's like bad writing, you know?
Right.
When you're reading a book, you're like, what? This doesn't make sense. Or I don't understand how they got here. And you have to reread and reread. Like, it really should be effortless.
Right.
As we turn the pages.
Right.
And part of that is making sure that you're paying attention again to those moments and not to the latest trend. You're paying attention to the people and not your editing style.
Got it.
All of that should be secondary or even tertiary, because it shifts.
I love that word. Tertiary. It's third, but it's a good one.
Yeah, it shifts.
Yeah.
But you know, the only thing that is going to stand the test of time is what you give them.
Yes.
And what you give them should be a representation of who they are.
Right.
And if I'm doing my job correctly, when they see their proofs, because I send them album proofs before anything goes to print, when they see their proofs, they're like, wow, like, you got us.
Yeah.
I didn't even know these things happened.
Right.
I forgot this person was there. Oh, look at Aunt Judy on the dance floor. Oh, I remember this moment with my dad. You know, like you were there, you were present, and I didn't even know you were there, and you got everything, you know, that matters so much more than giving them 1,500 images.
Right. So I thank you for all of that. And I am totally, team album with you, Michael. We're almost out of time. From a practical standpoint, are there some album companies that you really love?
Yeah.
And then do you use a design software?
Yes.
So what are your recommendations?
Yeah. So I will say building albums doesn't have to be hard, right? I use Funny software. Funny makes my life so easy.
Yes.
Before
FUNDY, Fundy, if people are like, what did he say?
Yes.
Fundy.
Funny designer. Before I started using Funny, I was building albums in Photoshop.
Yeah.
Like I was storyboarding. I was storyboarding in Photoshop, and then I'm introduced to Fundy, and it makes like my life so much easier. And this drag and drop, it's seamless.
Yes.
And the beautiful thing about Fundy is that they have relationships with tons of album companies that you can use right in their software. Me personally, I love Floorcolor.
Flora?
Yes,
Okay.
Floorcolor is a album company based out of Portugal. And I fell in love with Floorcolor because I was looking for a wow album. I was like, I want something that is a statement. And I found a wooden album. And they had it, and I said, yes.
Let's check this out. This is the cover.
Right?
Cover of my family photo album.
Right? It is classic. It's classic, and you don't see that much. And I said, yes, that's my wow statement. And then I fell in love with their line. And so I use Floorcolor for all of my wedding albums and my family albums. And then for my engagement albums, I use Miller's because I like, something that they can write on. And if they want their guests to sign or a nice keepsake. So they have Miller's for the smaller albums, and then for my wedding albums, I use Floorcolor.
Okay.
And they're amazing.
Great. Yeah, I used to use art or Leather Craftsman, and they recently closed. And the closest I've found, and actually one of their 30-year employees is now working for Fineo.
Okay. Yep.
And so if I were still doing a lot of albums, I would check them out. Okay. So 2 quick questions, and then I got to run. Question 1, I know you have something you'd like to offer You have a drawing. So tell me about that. And
Yeah.
how do they enter?
Yes. So I want to make it easy for photographers to learn how to build albums. And I think part of that is not having to figure it out on your own. So I'm definitely willing to give away a free coaching session on how to build an album and show them the tools that I use and walk them through the process and use their pictures so they can see how I take a wedding, because I build albums even for couples that I don't photograph their weddings. I take other photographers' pictures and showcase that story so they can see what does a story look like? What are the components of a story that you want to look for? And that one-on-one, photographers find it so helpful to say, I never thought about that. I didn't think these two can go there, and it changes their way of photographing.
Okay. And so I have 1 minute left.
Yes.
So what is either something you have not shared or just a parting thought that you would like people to take away?
A parting thought is that you don't have to be a salesman to make families happy.
Got it. Love it. All right. And so to get in touch with Michael, it is michaeldavisphotography@gmail.com. And so you can apply for that session. And this has just been so fun. And I love commiserating with somebody that believes everything I do. So.
Yes. So just a correction, is Michael T. Davis Photography.
Oh, sorry.
At
Yeah,
gmail.com.
I don't have my glasses on.
No,
Michael T. Davis Photography @gmail. Thank you so much. And stay tuned for my little quick wrap up.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for listening this far. Michael was awesome, wasn't he? And I'm going to get him back on and have him do a step-by-step of how you design a wedding album another time. But I hope you are super inspired. If you're already doing albums, just excited to hear all that. And if you're at the point where you're like, you know what, I do want to offer a higher level of service, a higher level of service. I hope this motivates you to think about, when we're working with clients, that what we do is super important, and taking the time to tell the story is, first of all, it's really fun. It's very gratifying, but it also is so special and important. So I don't think I need a lot of giving you the little wrap up, other than being intentional, getting to know the people really well, having consultations where you learn everything about them and their day and family, and then being really mindful as you're photographing about how that can translate into an edited down album with 80 pictures, 100 photographs, a series of books. So that's it for now. Stay tuned. Hope you're enjoying 2023 or whatever year you're in as you're listening to this, and stay tuned till next time. Bye.